Computer. Hey YouTube, we're back. This is Dawn, Ivy, and Abby. We are Writers and Recs, and we are coming to you this time. We're doing another talk about like how to with writing crafts this week again. It was my turn to pick, so I chose to basically pretty much go back to the basics. Since this is since we are still relatively a new series, go back to the beginning. One of the first things that you do when you start putting your stories together is working with characters and how you create your various characters. Because I had a radio interview not too long ago, and the interviewer, she said something very curious to me that had me thinking, where she said, your characters are like real people. And I'm like, wait, what? they're supposed to be human their stories, that they're not. How did that happen? Who let that happen? Baby, who hurt you?
Oh. I can think of a lot of books, I don't name names or anything, but in general, where I've been reading ones mostly that I can rent from a certain service.
Yeah.
You all can fill in the dots there. But within the urban fantasy genre, I started reading a lot of books. I was like, oh, this is good in the first, because the premise will be good or the cover will be amazing. And then you'll start reading, and you're like, this heroine sounds like every other freaking urban fantasy heroine, who's just basically her one characteristic is she's sarcastic. Like I love that. Don't get me wrong, but like I'll get 50 or 100 pages into the book and there's not like a single other layer. So I get confused with every other sarcastic heroine out there. You know your heroines have layers. And they've got usually a lot of family trauma and they're working through shit. But like I'll just get this one person who's like, I make jokes, so that's my personality. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's me. Damn. No, I'm a lot deeper than that.
Layers, just quirks, and I keep notes of them because I use Scrivener. So I have like on the left side there's all my chapters and everything, but then there's all like my notes section as well. So I always go in there just to make sure I'm getting it right, that the things I've already established for this person. But I download lots of different character worksheets and I do them all. Like sometimes I do them in the beginning, sometimes I do them again in the middle just to check in and make sure I'm still staying true to the people I've been writing, you know, as in what their qualities are and why this couple balance each other. You know, when I first started, I just kind of had this couple in my mind, and he was kind of, you know, kind of a goody two-shoes Boy Scout, and she was kind of like not aggressive. I want to say she was assertively flirtatious, you know, with him. And this is like in the 1800s, so that's not something that happened very often. So, but yeah, about halfway through, I had to do it like, okay, but why is this a good couple? Because I think I had a reader who commented, all I see from them is lust. And I was like, well, I don't think that's true. So I kind of did a little check-in where I was, and you know, that person later finished the book and liked it, but he was just one of those readers that complained the whole time. A man, of course. But I'm not trying to be sexist, but every time I've had a man reader, it's been a little bit difficult to deal with. He flounced several times and said he wasn't coming back. And then he came back and apologized.
And that ruins the effect of the flounce.
I had to do a check-in. I had to do a check-in.
Yeah, then your flounces don't matter.
Like, why is this a match? Why do these people balance each other? Why are they better together than apart? So I think for romance, and that's a big question, because I think that if you don't have that answer, that happily ever after doesn't seem earned or organic.
I think it's more of a thing of it feeling organic, because when you take two characters that aren't really fleshed out or that haven't grown enough and just cram them together, it's like, okay.
It's like mashing Barbies together, make them kiss faces. Like, or, you know, here's Barbie, here's Ken. Yay.
Now kiss.
Like you're 5. Yeah, like you're 5.
Barbie, G.I. Joe. Not Ken.
There you go.
Taller woman, shorter man. You know, not seen a lot.
Yeah.
On behalf of my brother who is short, I'm like, yeah, give short men a chance. They're sweet. Except my brother who's annoying.
I make my brother's Matchbox cars fall in love with each other.
Oh, well, there you go. That's normal. You were waiting for Pixar movies to come out, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, she was waiting for RC and the Transformers. RC and there was another female Autobot. The doppelganger knows it.
Well, I don't think in the movies is Bumblebee's a guy, right? He's
Yeah.
out with a girl in the Bumblebee movie. That doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was very sketchy. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
I don't even want to understand or think about alien robot gender. I think it's kind of, or intercourse. But someone out there has definitely thought about it. So that's
Lindsay
cool.
Ellis. She
Oh,
has
takes
she has a 9-part series.
I can't even. Anyway,
I think she's come up in every one of our videos.
This guy's nostalgia chick / now
Lindsay Ellis is everywhere.
Pretty
She's
amazing.
just
Yeah.
ubiquitous.
Yeah. But yeah, she is hilarious. And I know one time I did fall asleep to that playlist and I had it on loop on the laptop and it scared the hell out of the doppelganger because out of nowhere, I had it all nice and low. And then out of nowhere, you hear Anthony Anderson just scream, "Shut up, Grandma!" She was like, I felt concerned.
So when you make characters, April, you do the character checklist. Are there any types that you prefer or any ones from a particular source you download?
Well, this wasn't so much, it wasn't as much of a checklist. It was a list of adjectives, loyalty, family, this and that, like what's important to each person. And some of those were both important to both of the characters, but in different ways. Reputation is how important is that? Reputation is very important to Ian. It's not as important to Charity. These are my hero and my heroine, by the way. And what's it called? And then I sort of like did like mini versions of that for all the side characters, because I try to make sure that none of my side characters are just like one-dimensional. You know, I try to reveal things. Like at first, they have a cousin Edward. He's a duke, and he's into antiquities. He's like an archaeologist for his time. You know, that they didn't have that word quite yet. But he's into antiquities and ancient things and everything. And everyone thinks he's a bit dotty because he comes home and then he goes on and on about his travels. Everyone's like, okay, who cares? But then, you know, later on, he says something really nice that ties it into what people are going through now, you know? And like he says something to Ian, who lives in this house that's a bit of a ruins. He says, well, what kind of improvements are you making? 200 years from now, people are going to go tour this house and everything. And he's like, I never thought of it that way, you know? Like he never thinks of something he built as being something that's going to outlast him, you know? So that just sort of shows that, let's say, even though Edward seems dotty, he has an emotional intelligence maybe that other people lack. And so like some of the more, let's say, annoying characters that are well-meaning but annoying, I try to give them layers as I go so that they're annoying but they're lovable. Like her mother is a bit of a pill, like, and my readers get really annoyed with her at times, but then every once in a while she'll say something sweet or insightful where you realize she's not so bad. So I do even have a villain where the heroine says something to her that pinpoints one of her insecurities, you know? And I'm like, so she's a villain, but deep down there is a vulnerability in her, you know, that if you poke it, that's when her nasty comes out. So I'm always trying to humanize everybody, you know, so that these people feel real by the end. I feel like I've succeeded to some level. This next book I'm on, though, it's book 2, where I'm taking a side character and spinning her off into her own story. It's a little bit difficult because, like, she's in there, but she's not as popular as some of the other side characters. And I wonder why I didn't do one of them first. But I don't know. This was the one I planned for book 2, but she did have a lot of time. It's her lady's maid, and they're doing a masquerade house party switcheroo with her and the older sister, who everyone's like, when's her book? And I'm like, it's going to be the last one. I'm sorry.
Is that what you'll pay me for? Well, also, it's the one you're building up to, obviously. But
yeah,
it's a good idea, the list of values, because I think people want to define it by like eye color, hair color, which are important, like physical characteristics, but then they don't think about like what really drives a person deep down as a person.
Yeah,
I think I'm trying to get her to her. I think her main issue is that she doesn't value herself or her contributions very much, she doesn't see herself. She thinks being a lady's maid is all she can be, and she should be so happy with it, because that's like a big deal in that time. But it's the upper rung of a servant, and she's even been offered a future as a housekeeper, basically been saying, hey, you're the one who's going to take over from the current housekeeper. And she's like, oh, I should be happy. Isn't this supposed to be happiness? But she's not. She just feels pressure. And she's got a father who's kind of a crazy, always has a get rich quick scheme, and she kind of covers his debts and doesn't tell him about it, and all this stuff. So she's stressed out. She doesn't value herself, and she's just always taking care of others, whether it's someone she's being paid for or her father. So I think a lot of this book is having her sort of come into her own and value herself, and maybe it takes her masquerading as a lady, but
Yeah.
I get there. I'll get her there.
Yeah, when I start creating characters, it's funny because we all started in fan fiction. You still write fan fiction. So both of you still write fan fiction, right?
Abby doesn't anymore, right? Because
Oh, okay.
we had a very painful divorce with our previous shared fandom.
Yeah.
Really painful. Cults were involved. It's a thing. Branding.
Okay.
Not great. But I still do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for a different fandom because it's not as messed up. So
I guess I just stopped because I felt like fandom was my training wheel kind of situation. And now I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm ready to do this on my own. And the only thing you don't have to do with originals is, fan fiction as opposed to originals, is you don't have to create the characters. They're already there and people already like them. So yeah, the big challenge is establishing your characters and who they are, and also not making it boring for the reader, because you can't just say, oh, well, meet Jane. Jane has low self-esteem, and she but
here's
she
my info
with
dump.
her
Yeah.
But you have to show that in dialogue and in action. You have to show who they are, and sometimes the action has to pause for a moment just for you to say something about their childhood, so that the reader gets more little nuggets of information like who this person is.
Yeah. Because see, when I start creating my characters, I go to anime and I'll be like, okay, I have a hero who is an Aya type. And this is just like me in my head. I'll be like, I have a hero that's an Aya type. To me, Aya is Aya Fujimiya from Vice Cruise. He is someone that he became an assassin because he's a very quiet, reserved person. He became an assassin because his little sister was in an explosion that killed their parents. His sister's in a coma. And so now he has to pay off her medical bills. So in order for him to pay, so this is someone who is willing to kill for his baby sister. Someone who is willing to throw his life away. Someone who is quiet, reserved, and yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, I can find some really messed up animes. It's great. And so by night, he's this massive killer, and by day, he runs a flower shop with 4 other assassins. So Vice Cruise, it is hilariously good. The animation is so bad and cheesy that you can tell it was a product of the 90s, but it does have that character growth where you sit there and you see it. So I'll sit back and I'll refer to an actual anime character. I'll be like, okay, I have someone that's an Edward type, or someone that is
from
a
Full Metal
Kurama.
Alchemist, I assume.
Yeah, right back there.
Yeah, I was bringing Abby up to speed on which Edward, because there are other Edwards, and she'd be like, what?
Oh yeah, no, not Edward Cullen. No.
Never.
No.
There's nothing there. There's nothing there to build on.
There's amazing abusive cruelty and stalking. Sorry.
I was about to say that. I was about to say no. Edward has some good villain fodder. That Edward has some good villain fodder.
Yeah.
And so, or you sit back and with the Once Upon a Villain, because I have to change everybody's names. it's like, okay, well, this person is supposed to be this character from the Disney universe. Okay, how can I mess with them? So again, it is kind of a little fanfic-ish, but you sit back and you give them. Where I start is, to me, I say what kind of trope they are, what type, anime type, or what trope they are, and then I'll go working from backwards there. Um, the actual physical characteristics, that comes in later. Let's see, because except for Elijah. Elijah, he came to my mind because I was watching the originals and I was just like, I love you.
Oh, like the actual one?
Yeah, I was watching.
Yeah, I can see that now. I can see that.
Yeah, I was watching the originals, and I love me some Klaus.
I was gonna say, because
also,
like of the two, I mean, there's no shade on Elijah. I'm just saying Klaus is.
Yeah.
Klaus.
Yeah, but Klaus is definitely the anti-hero.
On a nice generous day. On a nice generous day.
On a generous day. He could be the villain that you want to see redeemed, which a lot of people do.
I don't know if he quite got there, but whatever.
No, he didn't.
No,
not really.
Which is okay, because like I know you're gonna like hate me. Like I don't like the ending of the originals worth a damn, so don't get me wrong on that. But I'm just saying, it's kind of nice that basically his only redemption at all is like he likes his family, but like he's still a really terrible person who tears out hearts, and like don't ever get that confused.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I did Elijah, I'm like,
what we're gonna forgive in a villain as long as they're kind of hot.
He's a really good dad, but not really. But he kind of is. Tearing out hearts for his daughter. I'd be like, well, he likes his daughter, so it's
But okay. Look at how funny he is.
I love Steve Buscemi. He's a great actor. He's so funny.
How do you
do that time he was on John Oliver as like a distraction to tap dance. He's like, do you know how to tap dance? He's like, nope, no, I do not.
I know. I know I went through the same thing like a couple days ago because I was talking to a friend of mine and I'm like, because again, I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm like, between Sephiroth and Rufus, Rude and Reno, I don't even want to see Reeve because my questions are, I'm already questioning my morals. It is really bad. There are some things now that I'm just like, yeah, so
I'm hearing a lot of great things about that game. A lot of people recommending. I don't play anything, and I feel very left out of that conversation because the only games I play are the Nancy Drew ones.
I don't play anything, but it's not an elitism thing. I just have shit hand-eye coordination and get confused. So I just, once we upgraded from graphics from Super Nintendo to like even Nintendo 64, I'm like, I'm confused in space. I need it to be flat, and that's it.
I'm just into logic.
But I love me some Donkey Kong Country. Like that was the.
I don't have any hand-eye coordination, so whenever Nancy has to do a chase, like there's this one where she has to be chased on like a jet ski, and I'm like, oh god, it took me a million tries to get through that level. But whenever if it's a logic puzzle, I'm like, yes.
I'm uncoordinated as fuck. So.
Well, for everyone that does not play video games, there are videos
on Twitch and stuff.
Well, on Twitch, yeah, but then also here on YouTube.
Let's Plays, yeah.
Yeah, they have Let's Plays.
I watched an entire Let's Play Last of Us, and it was fast. I hear they're going to make a movie or TV show.
I think it's like going to be an Amazon Prime show, maybe, when we have TV again.
I'm not sure.
I hope they make a TV show because I feel like it needs more than just a movie. But I watched that entire game. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was heartwarming. I absolutely loved the characters and the voice actors they picked. And it was really well done. Sometimes you forget you're watching computer animated people, except for when it gets to gameplay sections. But on the cutscenes, things look very nice, very real. And obviously I love the fungus zombies, and but yeah, The Last of Us I was loving it. And I watched both South Parks. I watched Let's Plays on both of the South Park games. They were hilarious. I absolutely adored the Stick of Truth, and a Stick of Truth was a little better than the Fractured Butthole. But
Yeah.
I have a
And
friend who'll send me Let's Play for horror games, which are really fun, especially like indie horror games.
Hmm.
Definitely watched it's been a while, but I watched Let's Play of Let's Be Real, Five Nights at Freddy's and stuff. So if it's like a game that's already kind of scary, I'll probably watch someone Let's Play it.
it's more fun to see people's reactions, to watch their faces being like, no, ah!
Yeah, the doppelganger, they introduced me to the Five Nights at Freddy's series.
It's crazy,
And
right?
then I came home and they and their friends were trying to teach each other Greek. Yeah.
Okay. To tie into Five Nights at Freddy's? Just 'cause
They were just geeking out. So they were trying to talk, arguing over which one they should learn, Greek or Latin. And I'm like,
Latin.
and I was like, you know what? I love
Unless you're
all you
rushing a
guys.
sorority.
I was like, unless I love all you guys, but the minute I wake up as a motherfucking Build-A-Bear, I'm coming for each and every one of you.
Abby,
So,
do you know any Latin? I mean, I assume because you have like a Catholic
Well, I
background.
know a lot of songs in Latin,
Oh, okay.
but
Well, yeah.
and obviously Latin is the base for, French, Spanish, and Portuguese and Italian, all, the Romance languages
Yeah.
and everything. So I feel like if you know any Spanish, you kind of gist of a lot of Latin, because I'd say
Some of it,
Spanish
yeah.
is closest to Latin, in that it's very simple the way that Latin is.
A lot of the verb forms, especially the future tense in Spanish
It's
and Latin,
amazing
line
what
up
people
really well.
learn from video games. I was singing an old song, Personality,
Okay.
it's Johnny Mercer
Yeah.
tune, uh, you know, when Madame Pompadour was on the ballroom floor, said all the gentlemen, obviously, blah, blah, blah. And
Okay,
it goes
yeah.
like that. It's cutesy. The madam has a perfect personality, right? And I had these teenage boys tip me on it on the street, and I was like, what? And they
You're
were
like
like,
12.
it's from, but then it's from a game.
Okay.
They have this radio station that plays old songs in one of the zombie games. I forget which one has this base where you go and this radio station is playing all these old songs. So a lot of them are learning like all these old songs just from their video games. I think it's so cute.
I think it's
I don't
cute.
want to be like minimizing. Oh, it's so cute. No, it's
No,
cool.
it's interesting because like it becomes cultural. So
yeah, I feel like video games got a really bad rap for a really long time, and I think especially with this quarantine, a lot of people are seeing the value in it. The only reason I'm not
okay.
sick, I swear.
Okay, just making sure.
I'm type.
Okay.
The only reason I would say you can cut that
New
out, right?
question in our society: are you sure you're okay, or is it just a cough?
yeah.
I'm okay. It's just me drinking soda and I don't know,
Talking, yeah.
going down the wrong way. But I feel like they got a bad rap, but I feel like the Gen Z millennials were ahead of the curve a little bit because they're very able to socialize digitally.
Yeah, I
be
feel like
social.
older generations are sort of cut off in a way. I mean, they have the phone.
I think they're kind of seeing that, hey, this is a way to interact.
Well, you know
Some
me,
of them could be playing Call of Duty or this or that.
except for Don, all my friends are what my mom used to call not real online friends who don't exist. So who's
That's
laughing
because
now,
your mom
Mom?
has seen me.
Yeah, that's true. But like, almost all my best friends are from fandom. Like, I still talk to Ellie every day. I talk to Lilibreck. I talk to obviously Jenny, but I talk to others who are like from fandom from like 15 years ago. So like, they're people I may have, like Sue, like I may have met them once, but I still see them and like talk to them, Fire Bunny, that kind of stuff. So
I talked to you and Fire Bunny and Melissa and the most. Oh, and a cheerful Earl.
oh yeah, I haven't ever talked to her like one-on-one, but good for her that she's around. I mean, just hey.
Well, she's on my time zone, so
That makes sense. Yeah,
so that helps.
I talk to Rushka all the time. She emailed me, and I think she's one of those. I haven't heard from you in a couple weeks. Is America still intact? Because she's in Australia. Kind of.
No.
I'm safe, but I don't know.
I would say that you guys know more about my daily life than most of my family and real life friends, especially at this moment. It becomes a lifeline, having those people to talk to. But I'm sorry, I took us way off.
No, but I think that's a good point that like, even though we're not really about that, like the video games have more going for them than I think a lot of people knew. I didn't keep up with them because I literally, my hand-eye coordination sucks. I'm terrible at them.
Yeah.
So I just got off the train at like 12.
But there's also, I know along with the Let's Plays, there's also some channels that they cut out a lot of the gameplay. So it'll just be the cutscenes and like maybe just enough gameplay so that you'll have context for the cutscene.
Yeah.
So this way, instead of sitting down and watching a Final Fantasy VII Remake, instead of watching that for 40 hours, they've condensed it down. Yeah, the game's like 40 hours long. They condensed it. They've condensed it down to about a 15-hour shot. So that's a lot more manageable. Some places they have it, I think, like 12 hours. I think one channel had it for 10 or something like that. I don't remember.
And I think for one thing is that we think about, I mean, this is a good point you and Abby both brought up, is we think about inspiration. And because I'm very much a TV movie person, and I read when I'm not doing a million things for my mentor at grad school, and it's not only about grad school, but I get mine from TV and movies, not gonna lie. But obviously people don't always think about, if they're not familiar with anime or familiar with video games, as these are also avenues with really rich storytelling that they can also see.
Oh yeah.
What they can take from that development and that format when they integrate it into their own works. And there's more for inspiration than just what you may think of off of.
And let's not forget the memes.
Netflix.
They are an endless generator of memes.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it's just speaking of characters, I would say that I start a lot. I mean, I feel like a lot of my characters, sometimes I have a fictional character in mind when I'm starting it. Like, I remember when I was first thinking of this Regency idea, I had started to think of writing a Game of Thrones fan fiction with Arya as the daughter of the house and Gendry as the servant, because I shipped them so hard. And God, I love the way they made it happen, then tore it away, but that's fine. It's fine. But but then it kind of evolved from there, because I'd written sort of a modern version of this thing in a previous book of the girl chases boy dynamic. And I remember I got it read by Avon and HQN at the time. Like I'd had some people looking at my stuff back then. And it was somebody from Avon Romance and HQN both read it, and they both thought my heroine came off crazy, right? I was like, well, I thought that was the point. Like, at first she comes off crazy, but then you realize the context through flashbacks, and eventually you're like, damn it, she's right. These two need to be together, and everything, because like it just looks like she's just chasing after him just cause or whatever, but they've really been there for each other through the years. Anyway, so I decided maybe it's a little less crazy in the 1800s. I think a lot of behaviors can be amplified in the past that might come off nutty now, right? If that makes sense.
That because in other genres, because of the rules, I mean, you guys are confined by the rules, and historical, this is what was really societally proper at the time, and there's like a billion stupid rules for like Victorian England or Regency and stuff. I think we write a lot in urban fantasy and paranormal, so I don't like alpha holes per se. Jenny and I have many debates about those.
Yeah.
But I will say that you can get more away with aggressive guys, I think, in paranormal, because you're like, well, they're also part werewolf, so
yeah, they have that animal instinct.
Modern contemporary that's just set in art, real.
Yeah,
it just comes off like, well, that guy's nuts.
I think the word you want for some of them is, this guy's super rapey, and he's like about a year away from a police report file.
And yet some women are still reading Mr. Super Rapey. But I guess it's different when he's a vampire.
It's a little different, I think, because you can play with the idea of instincts, or like they're completely different, like literally almost alien cultures where these are just not the same consideration.
I have a friend who wrote a hilarious story. She wrote it on Literotica, so check it out if you can. I think it's called Big Dirk Allen and the Tiny Blonde.
Oh, so this is Kitty Beaver, right?
Yeah, Kitty Beaver.
Yeah, she's good.
Kitty Beaver is hilarious. Everybody should read her. She writes crack erotica. It's the funniest shit. And basically she made each kind of an episode of a TV show. Each story is like an episode, and the gist of each one is for some reason consent is given, by the way, and they're both for some reason they have to solve mysteries by having sex. They have to solve every single problem they have is somehow solved by them having sex, which they are both very eager to do. So, and in fact, they'll find an excuse to make the sex the solve. Even when they might not need to have sex, somehow they still end up having sex in order to solve the mystery. So, Yeah, so that kind of heightening works in fantasy. It works in comedy, obviously, and it works in historical in a way that it doesn't when you have a basis in our real world.
Yeah, I think when you're in contemporary, there, not that everybody navigates it, but I think there's just this line of things where behaviors that you might let go of because it's from a different time, or they're literally different creatures, like that you can't do, or you shouldn't be able to get away with as much in
Yeah.
contemporary, where you're like, this is our society now. Usually this would just get you like super arrested. Okay, it's weird.
Yeah.
As far as like when I do characters, I don't do worksheets. I have in the past. I didn't find them as helpful for me. Sometimes I'll do them for general things like eye color, hair color, some stuff about family history maybe. I think when I start a story, I start with the character who's probably, I mean, I know it's a romance, so like they're both 50-50 in the book, but there's usually one character who's more going through an arc than the other. And so usually it's the character who has more of an arc to go through that I come up with first. And I think it comes from, I know this sounds like stupid, but like a what if question kind of thing, which I guess is how all stories start. But I also, even when I do write fanfic and was a fanfic writer in other places, it was, I'm a huge AU person, alternate universe stuff. So I was like, well, what if you just tweaked this one thing and it was completely different than everything else we watch? So I think that part of my brain keeps going when I'm doing originals of like, well, what if this happened kind of thing? And it was really weird. And then I start like going, well, then X would change and Y would change. So for example, and Abby will recognize the fingerprints on this. I have one that's like, well, what if someone were like the nominal supervillain of the city and he didn't really want to be that anymore? And he realized he'd fallen in love with sort of the new superhero on the block, and it was complicated.
Megamind.
Kind of, yeah, similar fingerprint. But you know what fingerprint really is, Abby. And so that was like, it became, the story would obviously be between like the sort of bad guy, the chameleon, because he can change colors. It's kind of his power. Midlight, that kind of thing. And the raptor who's like the superhero in the city. And I'm like, well, it's both their books because they share it, but like the main point of view is from the guy who's like, I just don't really want to have this crappy rap anymore. So that's where it sort of spun out from. But for me, when I start, because I'm a very plot driven writer, I mean, you guys know that I do a lot of outlining, and that's kind of how I think, and we'll get to differences in plotting and pantsing and gardening
I'm more
later.
of a pantser, I would say, but I differ in plot, but then the pantsing kicks in.
But for me, I used to be more, I mean, I am plot heavy, but like, I think sometimes I skimped on like starting with the characters too. So at this point, I kind of work out where they kind of grow together, where it's usually from this what if X happened to this one character and how would they react. And then I can plot it out. But what helps me is also getting a feel for the character first. So I might have the idea, I might have this sort of general arc of this is kind of what I want to do. This like maybe one paragraph summary what the plot might look like, just sketching out an idea like that's not even married to it. And then I spend like a week or two sitting with the character and like thinking about them. And what I do is I like to call them vignettes. So like I write like 1,000 and 1,500 word like little outtakes, like here are things that are from like maybe 3 or 4 of the worst moments of this character's life, and then here are 3 or 4 of the best moments of this character's life until we meet them on the page, and like why is that, and like what goes in there. Like it may never actually get in the book, it probably won't, but it's like, oh, so that's what happened when their father left, or oh, that's what happened when their mother died, or like whatever. And then it's in the back of my mind as I'm crafting them and crafting the plot at the same time. So, and when I teach writing workshops, especially on like, I do one on like creating novellas, that I say first we got to get to know our characters. And I know it sounds weird, but like take your hero or heroine and whatever permutation, if it's 2 heroes, 2 heroines, poly arrangement, whatever, but take whoever are your nominal protagonist and leads and do a couple of vignettes from them, at least one that was a great moment for them and one that was like a crushing moment for them, and how they react and how it changed them. And then if you have a villain or an anti-hero, usually people have a villain in these kind of stories somewhere, write a couple of vignettes for your villain, because if your villain's not nuanced or doesn't have any facets to their personality, they're not interesting to read, and they don't become an interesting foil for driving the plot or contrasting with the hero or heroine.
Yeah.
So don't forget to also, when you do you're just playing with vignettes, playing with the history of these characters, play with the history of your villain too, and get a feel of, because villains weren't born villains. They didn't come out of the womb ready to like take over the world. So
one of mine did.
Okay, well, Mo didn't start out as complete assholes. And usually, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get a stump for like 5 seconds. And usually like villains are more nuanced than the one we might currently have at Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm just gonna be super real with y'all. Like I remember for our book, Frozen Ashes and Smoldering Shards, it's hard to say and I always trip over it. But Jenny and I were writing it, and we like, the villain is a politician. But the reason we're writing him is he's also doing all these things to help his brother, who's been disabled for a while because he's exposed to something magical that really affected his ability, kind of left him sort of schizophrenic. I mean, he's not really, because there really are things that he can see that no one else can. But so yeah, he's doing these terrible things, our villain, and being very, megalomaniacal, but at the same time, he thinks he's doing it. At least part of his justification is it's because I can make the world easier for my brother who's sick and I feel like I'm responsible for. And I was like, see, that's some nuance in a villain. Like, you might not like him, but you could understand trying to help us, or at least justifying to yourself in a Walter White way that's for my family and I'm doing it for my family.
You know
But
what?
nowadays, you can just be a giant Cheeto asshole, so it doesn't really matter, I guess.
You know what? I will step in to say that when we have talked about villains before, this is one thing that's always come up. And even when I watch other videos and everything where people are like, when they talk about villains and they want to get into digging deep with their villains, and they're like, okay, you have to give some sort of reason and for the villain being villainous. Even if he is a villain that sees himself as the hero of his own story, it's just turned around some sort of way. I'm seeing that a lot. And I'm seeing it to the point where a lot of people are also getting it wrong. So I will caveat that. Well, I don't even know if I'm using that word right, but I will underscore that by saying, if you feel like you cannot pull off a good villain by giving him a tragic backstory, if you don't want to have people sympathize with your villain, that is okay. But on the flip side, if you're going to give your villain no reason to be a villain, if you're going to sit there and if you're going to sit there and be like, they're bad just because he wants to be, you have to own it.
Yeah, or make them fun.
Yes.
I think there's this reminds me of horror.
Westworld. Oh,
because
sorry.
they've been doing a lot of, and I'll let you talk about Westworld one second, but they do a lot of Platinum Dunes, Michael Bay's company in the mid 2000s did a lot of, we'll just reboot old slasher movies and give like them backstories now. So they give you this huge backstory on like Leatherface, and he's just this abused, mentally intellectually disabled person, and that's why he's upset, because people just make fun of him and blah blah blah. And of course the Rob Zombie 2007 reboot of Halloween is terrible, because it's basically the first 50 minutes are his life is sad, his mom's a stripper, blah blah blah, he's abused by his stepfather. Like, I don't care. Like, I think there are certain villains, and I think you see that a lot in horror and within the slasher genre itself, which, love it or hate it, I tend to like them. Or the reason I think Michael Myers works in the original 1979 John Carpenter's Halloween is because he's played as if he's a great white shark who just happens to be a person. Like, he's played as a force of nature that you can't stop, you can't bargain with it, you can't, appease him. He's just going to kill you like some sort of great monster out of the dark, and that works. And when you start giving him a tragic sad where he was bullied and his mom was a stripper, like, no one cares. Like, it creates the power of almost like this force of nature after you. But you have to commit to that being your type of villain. Like, you can't halfway it. Abby, you were gonna say.
Well, if you think of the chart, right? The that little chart, the lawful good, neutral good, chaotic,
the D&D
good,
alignment,
blah, 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 neutral evil, blah blah blah, and everything. He's chaotic evil, right? Michael Myers, right?
Yeah, I guess, because there's no real way to predict which thing's going to set him off this one time, because sometimes he'll stalk you from the hedges and sometimes he'll just stab you, but you don't know which you're getting.
Yeah, I would say but I was thinking of Westworld, where you have different levels of villainy, of good, of bad, of neutral, and everybody. Like, I don't know if I'm spoiling. I'm going to try to say this without spoiling anything, because if anybody wants to watch Westworld, but I would say characters sort of change. I would say that Dolores started out as lawful good, started going to neutral good and chaotic good. She basically went through the entire chart until she was basically chaotic evil, right? But now she's sort of cycling back to kind of a lawful evil. And then, but she's like, let's say, she's determined, she's very focused, and she's not, she's definitely like both a hero and a villain at the same time. Whereas right now we have an absolute villain who thinks that he's doing a good thing, so he's lawful evil as well. And the two of them are sort of pitted against each other. Then you have Maeve, who is, I would say that she's lawful neutral in a way, because she has her own set of morals and compasses, but she will sort of kill indiscriminately if she feels like she's being threatened, or anyone she cares about is being threatened, because she's a host. And she basically sees humans as the enemy to an extent, right? But not every, like, if you can tap into her sympathies, she cares, you know? She'll have you as an ally, and she'll fight for you too. So it's just like, it's a show full of people. Oh, Bernard, I would say, I think he's lawful good. I would say he's completely good. I think he went to like chaotic good at one point, but he's sort of back there, and he's sort of set up as a protagonist, whereas Dolores is an antagonist, but I wouldn't call her the villain or him the hero, if that makes sense. So who's the hero and who's the villain sort of is different over every episode, and I find that fascinating. You know, yeah, I really recommend Westworld. I think it really has a lot to say about humanity for a show about very human-like romance.
Yeah, because I know 2 movies. One I have seen, one I refuse to watch.
Hotel?
Maleficent
Oh, that's
and the Angela Jolie,
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie. I've watched that. I don't care for it.
I didn't even watch it because I love the fairies the most, and I heard they turned them into idiots, and I was like,
Yeah,
I'm done.
I haven't seen it either.
The fairies are the heroes of the whole story. You can't tell me different.
they turned Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather into bumbling idiots.
Yes.
Not
gonna watch.
Aurora would be dead if it was not for Maleficent.
I hate that.
Even
Wicked didn't do that.
Yeah, Wicked didn't do it that way.
They turned her into good in her own way, but she was still dangerous to Dorothy. So basically, Wizard of Oz happened the way it happened, but there was a little political agenda behind. It was more tongue-in-cheek and clever and everything.
No, this was a whole retelling of Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where Prince Philip's kiss wasn't even what woke up Aurora.
Yeah, I know the entire plot because I've watched several videos savaging it.
Yeah. What's the other movie you refused to watch? Is it the sequel or is it something else?
No, it's The Joker.
Really?
I refused because okay, my mental state seems to fluctuate over the years.
Fair.
Before I met up with Ivy and the organization that we belong to, the writers' organization that we belong to.
Not be named.
Yeah. I was in a pretty dark place because I had just lost my job. I had been kicked off of unemployment because I had not been working for a long time. I was basically depending on my mother for every little detail of my life. And I pretty much felt like a waste of space. Then I went and did the wonderfully stupid thing of reading The Killing Joke by Alan Moore.
Yeah, it's Alan Moore, definitely.
Yeah.
I was telling my class about that. I was teaching a class on villains, and I was like, there are certain comic book arcs that are so famous that even if I haven't read them yet, you know them, and The Killing Joke's pretty much one of those.
Yeah. And so I read The Killing Joke, and I read the monologue. Joker's infamous monologue. And the Joker was making some really interesting points. And that was when I had to sit down with myself and have a long conversation with myself. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, this is not, it's fun to sit back and be like, okay, yeah, I have this type of personality. But seeing the things that he has done in the comics and being like, okay, this mofo is actually making some sense. That is totally dangerous.
Yeah.
So seeing a movie where we're not only going to show you how he makes sense, but we're going to sympathize with him. No, I don't ever need to do that.
I have seen the film. And I will defend it a little because I expected it to be basically incel extravaganza, like glorification.
Yeah, same.
And I really felt by watching it that at the end you weren't supposed to be rooting for, his name is Arthur in
Yeah.
this. Like you weren't supposed to be rooting for him as much as going, so what, you're still a monster? That said, I can definitely understand how it would be something that someone might not want to go to because they could get the message wrong, but I don't
Yeah.
think it really glorifies it. I think the most interesting thing it does, and spoilers again, whatever, we're going to spoil lots of things, but just in case you haven't seen the Joker yet, people. Anyway, I think the most interesting thing it does is because it basically takes a look at, not that subtly, wealth inequality and disparity within Gotham City, which is just like an analog for like probably 1970s New York at best. It's very much like Taxi Driver. I mean, it's so much aping the patterns of Taxi Driver that it obviously hired Robert De Niro to be sort of the catalyst for the film as like his Arthur's hero in comedy, who he desperately wants to go on essentially the Tonight Show and be interviewed by Robert De Niro. So like, if you're going to watch the same kind of movie, just watch Taxi Driver because it's still a superior film, as good as Joaquin Phoenix's job is in it. But still, it's not Taxi Driver. It wants to be super bad, but it's just not quite that.
I think it's like Taxi Driver and King of Comedy.
Oh, definitely.
With the Joker.
It is. It's clearly Robert De Niro's in both, so it's not a coincidence.
I felt one of the big points it made was also, first, wealth inequality is a big villain in this.
Which is interesting, basically, against personified by Thomas Wayne. And you're like,
as is lack of government services for people with mental health problems.
Yeah.
You know, if his therapy and medication had not been cut, would we have seen a whole different thing?
Probably.
You know?
But I think the biggest thing for me was like, for the first time you saw a look at whether it was true to the comics or not, like the Wayne family went, well, they have all this money and this power, and you can solve problems by putting on a bat suit and fighting crime, which does work, at least in the comics. But like, what were they doing to contribute to society as it was kind of crumbling from like what they could have done? And so playing Thomas Wayne as uncaring at best and somewhat villainous at worst it was an interesting twist. It was an interesting twist on the dynamic that Thomas Wayne's at least general disregard for the poor and for Arthur and specifically was one of the many factors that ratcheted him up. So I appreciate the look at a different inverse of like what the Waynes could have been like to a different echelon in society in Gotham. That was interesting to me.
I would still say that Batman is going to be, even let's say if this was to make another movie about the origin of Batman in this version, in this reality, I would say that Batman is still good, but his father is a little bit less of a saint, Yeah.
And you only have his perspective on Thomas. When you're like an 8-year-old kid, your dad seems like the best thing ever. But like, it was not the incel celebration movie I thought it was going to be, because I really wanted to go into it saying, okay, it has an Oscar nomination. I'm curious, blah, blah, blah. It won an Oscar for Phoenix. I'm just like, okay, let's see what it's like. And it was not the incel celebration I thought, because I really thought the third act is very, not surprisingly, because it is the Joker, it devolves into chaos, but I don't think they celebrate him as someone you're supposed to enjoy. And I think Robert De Niro's speech to him is like, you're a joke. You can't just use this as an excuse to be a complete asshole. And I think that was the director saying this is not an excuse.
I don't think I ended up sympathizing with him, but I did see the systemic problems that created him that still exist. A lot of us don't kill and go bad because of it, but yes, there's a lot of problems that then and now, with the way the mentally ill are not cared for, where the way it's still not taken seriously. A lot of boomers will tell you to shake it off, and that's all in your mind. It's all in your head. Doesn't mean it's not real.
I will say that I think it's trying to tell that story of capitalistic greed and the system that fails you and all that stuff that brings you to the breaking point. And I think it thinks it's cleverer than it is, because I think the same points are made in a much more nuanced way where no one's really the good guy, but no one's really the bad guy in Parasite. So if I were going to watch only one movie about the 1% and the struggle, I would definitely take Parasite.
I am in love with it. And the Oscar night was like, I had this little party by myself, just sort of like just being so happy every time it won an award. I was like, oh.
And I won't spoil that one because the twist in it is so amazing. But I will say for the first hour, I'm like, this is clever. It's kind of like 11. They've gotten themselves hired by these rich
Fun. It's
people.
actually fun
I
to
was like,
watch.
they're really good at this. This is okay. We're an hour in. Where's the complication? But when it turns, you're like, wow,
Oh,
no
yeah.
one's the hero here. This is kind of amazing. And everyone's kind of like the parasite. And it's a mind blower. It's really good.
Yeah.
But I like
Love
the
it.
nuance in
Love
that, like Abby was saying, like the characters are nuanced enough where you're like, I want to root for you, but you definitely do some shitty things that have gotten you in this situation. Whereas I feel like if like Parasite was sort of like the graduate level class and how to like create this sort of metaphor about class inequality, blah, 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 then like the Joker's kind of like edgy teen in high school going like, I made a screenplay. Like it's not bad, but it definitely
was the
wishes
theme of
it
the
were
year,
Taxi
so-
Driver. Yeah.
Class inequality and wealth inequality was very present in Knives Out as well. So
Also Ready or Not, which I adore, but it's definitely just a good old like kill everything kind of movie. It's if you've
Yeah, I
not
have
seen Ready or Not, it's very fun. It's very
one
fun.
of the one of
Ready
the
or Not.
again one of the other YouTubers that I watch, Just Right. He did a video
Oh, I watched
essay
it
about,
too.
yeah, he did a video essay about Parasite. And he did a couple of them about Knives Out, but when he was talking about Parasite, he was like, I've noticed that there has been a plethora of movies coming out where the main theme is, and then they cut to homie chick from Ready or Not just screaming like,
Fucking rich people.
fucking rich people. Yeah.
You know how I think I was talking about the other week with you because Abby wasn't here, but the if you're working for emotional catharsis, sometimes just put on Beaches and Cry is kind of Abby's go-to, or
Not
a movie that
Beaches.
makes you sad. But
Color Purple. Well, there's a whole thing
Beaches is
of crime
sad.
that I have. Beaches, Color Purple. Christopher Robin, Don't Judge. It's an imperfect movie, but Pooh and Eeyore are so cute it makes me cry. And I
Okay.
can't stand it. But
Well, sometimes I might do that, but my catharsis is usually like I'll put in Kill Bill Volume 1, and once she kills the 88, I'm like, this is the best. But I find the final act of Ready or Not, I'm like, I'm with you, chick. I'm with you, Samara Weaving. You just kill a lot of people because I can't deal with this right now.
don't tell me, no spoilers. I haven't seen it, but I wrote it down. I'm gonna watch it.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it much. I'm just saying that obviously you can tell that since she's sort of set up as the final girl, there's a lot of fighting and like her trying to survive. So,
Yeah.
but when she gets to the
I
point
would
where she's
say
really,
Midsummer, one of my favorite movies of the year, was very cathartic for me because even though I don't think I would have made her decision. I feel like Danny was damned no matter what. Without spoiling, I feel like Danny, there was no winning decision that she could have made at that moment. You know?
oh my God, Jenny and I watched that the other week and I'm like, she's like, it's 2.5 hours long. We watched the regular cut. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, what did I even watch? I'm like, but it's really interesting, right? She's like, I'm not going to forget it. I'm like, no, you're not. So
Beautiful.
I actually really like Midsummer. I've seen it about 4 times now and I really enjoy it, but it's definitely, it's a patience game.
I wish that they would get the director's cut out because I saw it in the theater. Like I made a point because I really wanted to, and I honestly think there's a few scenes that actually enrich the entire story so much more where I was like, yeah, honey, get out that bear suit. Okay. You know, so.
I also feel like at some point Ari Aster saw he's the director, the remake of, God help me, The Wicker Man. And he's like, I will make someone stuck in a bear suit scary. Fuck off with my beer. And then he did.
That could have been it.
Because Nicolas Cage in a bear suit, not scary.
It compares
amazing.
much more to the original Wicker Man, though, because the original Wicker, I
yeah, the
love
original Wicker Man's
Man.
amazing.
It's haunting.
I can talk about cult horror forever, like forever. But I think going back
more cult horror.
Characters and writing villains.
I was watching
a line where you're going to either write a villain really. You have 2 choices. You can have a villain you can understand and empathize with, or you can write one that's a force of nature or just chaos incarnate. But you can't kind of mix and match, or else you
you cannot.
It doesn't work.
No, you can't. You can't. You
Yeah.
you can have and yeah, no, because I was sitting there like maybe Olivia, but then it's like no, we sympathize with Olivia.
Yeah, from your book, yeah. You understand as you go forward what her original family dynamics are. But I mean, I think there's definitely a place for villains who are forces of nature, who are the Michael Myers incarnate, where there is no bargaining with them. Like in the original Terminator, he really is just like, you can't bargain. You see them
that just went off. I was just watching that like maybe an hour.
It won't stop till it kills you. And there's something really terrifying because I think it does come from the visceral atavastic part of our brains that still remember being chased by lions or wolves, and they're not going to bark and they're not going to stop. They're just going to eat you, and there's like nothing you can do to stop that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, taking vampires, 30 days a night. They don't care. They're not there for anything. They're just going to kill you, and you don't have daylight for 30 days. So good luck. Like, sometimes that works really well, but if you mix and match, it's gonna completely fall apart. Like, you can't take Michael Myers and give him a sad backstory. You can't take Leatherface and be like, his name's really Tommy and he's sad. Like, that doesn't work. Which is why those movies are
I'd say like the Wicked treatment, right? Like, you know, the big bad wolf in the Red Riding Hood. I once watched a movie with Angela Lansbury called In the Company of Wolves, right? Where
the
it
Bill
was
Jordan
still-
one. Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah, oh, it was really a neat movie.
Yeah, it's
you know,
fascinating.
oh yeah, I liked it a lot, and it was basically really played on the wolf as a seducer, you know.
If
and
there's a movie
everything.
about werewolves in it, I've seen it. So just so you know.
Yeah, I'd have
Probably own it and have seen it multiple times, just so you know.
But I remember by the end of watching it, I'm like, end up with the wolf Red Riding Hood. But I have like a billion story ideas in my head, but I actually have a version of Red Riding Hood that's like sort of a romantic caper, like similar to like, Cary Grant, Grace Kelly.
I'm not old.
God,
I mean, I like Cary Grant, but I haven't
Grace
seen
Kelly. Oh, To Catch a Thief, To Catch a Thief.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay,
Or
I've heard
like
the title.
all of those, you know, romantic crime caper movies set on a Riviera and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know those genre.
I've actually had this one idea where I was going to call it Chasing Red, but apparently somebody else had a book called Chasing Red, and I was like,
Yeah, I've seen
damn it,
that
it's
title.
not even a Red Riding Hood story, I don't think. It's just a romance with kinkiness, you know?
I'm sorry. That's
I
going to be
need
our new
that title
tagline. It's
more.
not about Red Riding Hood. It's just a romance with kinkiness. I'm like, that is a great
Yeah.
quote out of context.
It's not even about Red Riding Hood, damn it. But my basically my version is where the wolf is a good guy. He's like an FBI agent who's obsessed with catching this criminal who's Granny, and she's like an old scammer. Like, she pulls like a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels on people, like gets close to man, seduces that, you know, even though she used to use her daughter, and then her granddaughter, who just was like, I'm not having any part of this whole business. She's just trying to live a good life. But the guy, the FBI agent, Drew Wolf, stupid thing, but starts stalking her in order to, because he knows he thinks she'll visit her grandmother at some point, and then he can finally catch her. And so basically he's the wolf, but he's a good guy, but he's doing a bad thing, obviously, invading her privacy, at some point pretending to be just some random guy. They get like stuck together after the flight gets canceled. He does things that make her get stuck in Europe, so that he knows he has to be with her on this little road trip to go to Granny's, you know.
I was totally thinking of a Carmen Sandiego type storyline with that, and then totally blitzed it. Yeah.
Well, Granny's going to be kind of a fun character. I want her to be not evil, but she sees what she's doing is good, because she's only stealing from the rich, like they can't really afford it. Right?
Abby, I would describe them as a Meredith character. Anybody who con artists, I definitely like, that's a Meredith. Both well known.
I think she'll be a fun con artist. You know, like, basically, I'm just thinking of To Catch a Thief mixed with Dirty Rotten Scoundrels mixed with It Happened One Night. Basically,
oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Take those three movies and mix them together. You know, and so that's basically my story. Don't anyone steal that. You know,
the execution, not the idea. But so what would be one or two things that you would absolutely not do in creating a character? Like, what is like a character don't for you guys?
Oh,
that you might not have hit on yet, I guess.
I try not to self-insert.
I
mean, I try to use elements of myself, but I also try to use elements of other people I know.
Oh, can I tell you something that you'll like hate me for?
Yeah.
But as you both know, I used to be a contract ghostwriter where I had to write many, many, many stupid stories that were novellas, usually about a romance with a sheik. So by about number 30, because I wrote 40 of them, I was running out of ideas, because why wouldn't you? So once one of my heroines was named April, and she was a redheaded singer who busked in New York.
You told me. I know about that.
I don't think I have the file anymore, but I was like, there definitely is one out there that's basically just a self-insert of you. But it wasn't about me, so that's the difference. It went well. You're now a she, yes, I guess.
I try to. I guess I try to not to make it into the pants situation that Bella is. I don't want anyone to slip into. I want people to sympathize or empathize or find qualities like, oh, I identify with that, but I don't want it to be bland to the point where anyone can be like, oh, that's totally.
I read books too. You got it.
I want them to live and breathe on their own and not be dependent on the reader for life, if that makes sense.
And see, it's funny because Maxwell Investigations, my very first, my first full series, that 3-book arc, that is like a total self-insert.
My first book was too.
Because it came about where a friend of mine, she called me up, and this is a funny story that that people enjoy. She called me up and she's like, hey, I want to do a radio play. I'm like, what? She's like, I want to do a radio play. Okay, like the It's Your World, because that was the thing on the actual radio. Tom Joyner's morning show, he had a radio drama called It's Your World.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay. And she was like, okay, well, we're starting there, we're putting it together and everything. And she was going to be the voice of Dylan, I was going to be the voice of Madison, and we constructed this whole storyline, but we couldn't find anybody else to do this with us. No one else wanted to do the voices. So
Call me next time. I've done voiceover.
So
she's good at it. She's modest, but she's good.
So I was like, I don't want to give up these characters. You know, this is actually pretty, fun. I don't want to give up these people. And so she was like, well, if you want to write a book about it, go ahead. Because at that point in time, my very first book had come out, and it was doing it's still out. It's my I try not to talk about that one.
I have one under a pen name. I'm like, it was good, but I'm good.
Yeah. That was my original, and that is my personal warning story. I will not get into that right now. But then I went and I wrote the first 3 books of the Maxwell Investigation series. All of everything that Dylan would do was this person that I was talking to. Those were her mannerisms, things that she would do, stuff that she had mixed in, everything that Madison did. It was to the point where Madison and her mother have an argument, and Madison ends up leaving out and ends up having a one-night stand, getting pregnant with some twins, with Werewolf Alpha's secret son, so it's okay. That's all leading into book 2. But my father read that and he calls me up. He's like, do I need to talk to your mother about something? Is everything okay with you guys? And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's good.
But I have to go with Dawn on this. Sometimes in some of my earlier manuscripts that I worked on, I was like, someone's definitely a psychologist, even though I'm not actually the kind that has a sofa and is clinical, but every so often someone turns out to be a psychologist. I'm like, well, that's what I know. So, but again, I'm actually an industrial organizational psychologist and not one who cures your problems by the hour. So it's a little different. But what's the one thing you would tell people not to do, Dawn, with their characters?
Just one little tiny thought.
Oh.
I think I'm not saying self-insert is always bad, because I think that's kind of where we start.
You mean to Mary Sue levels?
Yeah.
When I started, my first book was definitely very self-insert, but she was a little more assertive than I was, and everything. It's the fantasy version of me. But
yeah,
I feel like when you're having a bad time, sometimes just writing a better reality for yourself helps. Like Amy Heckerling once said, she's one of the best screenwriters ever.
Clueless. Yeah.
That Look Who's Talking basically came from, I was pregnant, I was miserable, and I thought, what would make me feel good right now? And she thought, John Travolta coming dancing into my kitchen, and then that idea turned into Look Who's Talking, So, and she ended up getting John Travolta for it. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of a form of therapy, I think.
It definitely is. We definitely talked about that too last week. If you want to, sometimes writing can be therapy when you're in the mood for it. Sometimes you're too sad for even that, but sometimes it helps so much.
But one thing that you just mentioned, the one thing that I would sit back and say when it comes to creating a character, one thing you do not want to do is you don't want to Mary Sue it. You don't want to sit back and make everything about them. You don't want everything to circle around this one character, and you don't want this one character to be so vacant and empty that even though things are happening to this character's just like, oh, okay, no, mm-mm.
Passivity and reactivity as a character, especially if
Yeah.
you're supposed to be the lead character, the lead
Yeah.
villain, is a big problem.
Yeah.
I was I'm teaching this class. This is the first time I've done the workshop, so I was actually basically split up into 2 things. It was psychology of villains. So the first half was explaining psychological principles, and the second half was the case study of 4 villains or anti-heroes, depending on how you catch them, who either exemplified well-written or poorly written villains. And I had Eric Killmonger and Hannibal Lecter from the films. I haven't seen the TV show, I admit that. And Harley Quinn, who I count more as an anti-heroine if you've seen Birds of Prey at this point.
Yeah.
But my bad example was Jean Grey from the films, just from both Last Stand and both also The Dark Phoenix, which, by the way, is both written by Simon Kinberg. So I don't know what they thought they were doing, rehiring the same screenwriter who messed up The Last Stand of The Dark Phoenix arcs like 15 years ago. But my point is, in both books, in both movies, even though Jean Grey is slightly better, Sophie Turner's Jean Grey is slightly more agency, kinda, if you squint. In Dark Phoenix than Famke Janssen's in The Last Stand. Both are terrible because she's passively reacting to things at best. I mean, I'm saying Sophie Turner's version somewhat reacts to things at best. Famke Janssen's just kind of stands there in an outfit and doesn't move. So that's a completely just reactionary character who's basically could be played by a mannequin. And it's not Famke Janssen's fault. She's a good actress. They just didn't give her anything to do. And in both ways, both films are written, it's more about the reactions of the men of the X-Men team, Magneto and Charles Xavier, and in Last Stand, especially Wolverine, to what's happening to Jean Grey, and not seeing it from the perspective of like Jean Grey is literally like melting down, but we don't get her perspective on it, and we don't get how that drives her actions actively, and that's a big problem. And that's why we hate it. Well, that's why I hated it. Because I mean, I was a huge fan of the Dark Phoenix arc when I saw it, and you have more time. I get that maybe it doesn't fit into 2 hours, but when I saw it in the 1990s cartoon show, like, it made sense. Like you could
it was on at least once a month.
Yeah, but like when you do it in the film, Simon Kinberg, you don't make one woman's pain and descent into rage and trauma about the dudes in her life reacting to it. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
She basically becomes a MacGuffin and not an actual character.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. So I guess that's my thing, especially if you're writing a villainous character. But if you're writing any character, like if you're writing a hero and you're like, this person's the chosen one because the prophecy said so, and their MacGuffin is just like, well, destiny said so, so they're always going to win. Like, there's no interest in that either.
Yeah.
No,
I prefer people to be proactive rather than reactive. You know,
I think most readers do. I hope they do.
My like, I would say a lot of the tension between my characters when they're fighting and when they're not being lovey-dovey, you know, because I'm writing romance mostly. It's primarily romance. There's a couple elements of drama and mystery and comedy, but it's the romance first. I would rather the thing that's keeping them from just being like, I love you, let's live happily ever after, be from within than from without, you know?
Yeah, that if they had one conversation in like a closet for 5 minutes,
obstacle.
it'd be fixed kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
I want them to go through things together that are external obstacles and become stronger because of it, rather than, hey, the minute this obstacle's lifted, bam, we're together and happy ever after.
Sort of the formula every 90s and late 2000s rom-com. Oh, if they just had one conversation, it'd be fine. They misinterpreted things. But yeah, I like it when it's more internally complicated than that.
Yeah, I subscribe to the react parry, like almost like sword fighting when it comes to my writing and with my characters. Have them in situations, yes, have something happen to them, let them react to it, and then let them do something to
they got to get a plan together to counter. Exactly.
Yeah, because I think
they could just stand around in an outfit and look cute and, you know, sort of like for 2 hours. That could be fun. That could be not fun. That's not fun.
No, it's not fun.
How do you fuck up so bad and they rehire you? How does he make money? How is that fair? I guess Jenny and I said mediocre white male problem, but
I don't know.
You pay me millions of dollars to fuck up something twice. I can fuck up anything. Let me do it twice for millions. That'd be great.
You know, I would gladly work with that, you know? Yeah.
You really screwed it up, but we think 10 years and time to think about it in the closet has made you feel better. So come out of your dungeon and we'll let you write it again. Oh, our bad.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm.
yeah, but don't make people reactive, whether they're your villain or your hero. They have to actually start making choices and acting on things, whether they happen to them and they make a plan afterwards. They can't just bumble through life just having things happen. I think the only film where that works, bear with, not the book because the book's dumb, is Forrest Gump, because he is kind of a reactionary character, but he's used almost as an allegory for an entire decade of changes. So we get his perspective on things, which is deliberately by design a simple perspective without really an agenda, and you interpret what's
He
going on
scales
behind
upward
him.
and then
Yeah.
back down and then
But since this movie is almost told as an allegory for a time, and it's sort of at that level than just character
he's just a
driven.
vessel.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
a
and there is
lovable
this love
character.
story with Robin, and I mean, right, Pim, but Jenny, and you love them for that, and you root for him because he's so sad. But at the core, I think the only reason it works that he reacts to all these weird things that happen to him, like I'm a ping pong champion or whatever, is because it's more about the allegory and the telling of a historical time period than it is about a character journey.
That, and plus it's like trying to wrap your head around so many bizarre things happening to this one person. Like, okay, I'm a ping pong champion. Oh, I met the president. I got shot in the ass.
I met
It's
the
like,
president again, went to the White House again.
yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, this is happening now. Oh yeah, I ran across the country because I just was bored. I'm going home now. Goodbye.
And I don't think it works as well in the original book, because the original book is clearly a farce, kind of like a Candide or a Tale of the Hub Valley.
I read it after watching the movie, and it was a little bit more.
This
It was
is
definitely
mean-spirited.
more tongue in cheek and sarcastic at
But
times.
the way they do it is he's definitely like the way you get to a vantage point for a decade and a set of movements, and not, which is why as also I've grown older and more cynical that I'd rather just have a movie that's about one woman's struggle with drug abuse and finding out and dealing with AIDS in the early 1980s, or one thing about a guy who lost his leg in Vietnam and his ability to hear it. Like I'd like to see the perspective from Lieutenant Dan and like Ginny and Bubba's own stories, because those are actually more interesting than Forrest. So, but I still like the movie because it's sweet, and who doesn't like Tom Hanks? So
I would say that they are more interesting as people, but he has a lot of things happen to him just by being present and being open and saying yes. Because that's all and it's like because he's simple, he doesn't think of consequences, so he's just open to anything, and that's
but
why
in a
so
sweet
many
way,
things
in
happen.
an endearing way.
Yeah. And so things
No ulterior
happen
motives.
because he's just there saying, okay, so it's
but
like,
unless you are Robert Zemeckis making Forrest Gump, I wouldn't advise just having a character who's literally like a feather on the breeze. Sorry, Abby, I cut you off. I'm an ass.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of virtue in saying yes and being open and being open to experiences, and he doesn't even see it that way. That's just the way he is.
And I suppose you could argue in that way he is an active character in that he doesn't say no to opportunities handed to him. He doesn't. You're right. He doesn't have the mental capacity. He doesn't self-doubt because it's not really the way he thinks. So it allows him to say, yes, I'll play ping pong, I'll do this, and that leads to his adventure. So I think that even he takes steps that if you sit back to that second layer, Abby, that he's doing things.
Like his personality isn't as compelling as Dan or Jenny, and but he's there and he's kind, and I think that's one thing that's nice about it. I love that moment where Bubba's mom gets that check.
Then they cut to her, now she has a maid, and it's great. It's funny. But yeah, so anything else to think about with characters? Because we can go on to the rec section. It just depends on what you guys want
to. I feel like I've said a lot today. Sorry.
No, it's fine. We missed you last week, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, well, I had a lot stored up because of last week. So.
Yeah, usually it. Oh, and also, I also want to preface this because other videos, since I was the one that started talking about Mary Sue's, I am also going to preface this as a dude can be a Mary Sue too.
I call them the Gary Stu.
Yes. Gary Stu. You do not want your character to be a Mary Sue. You don't want him to be a Gary Stu. I say don't do it. It can be done. only if you can have your main protagonist be a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu, but only if you have a cast big enough around them that there will be at least one person that will be like, no, hold on, do it. No, you cannot let Kirk press the button. No, do not let Zeus fuck the thing. No, that you have to have other characters back there to hold this character back. Like, okay, yeah, we know they're gonna go off on this adventure. We know that they're gonna do this. Dragon Ball Z, Goku is a Gary Stu. I don't give a
Oh, hey,
what
definitely. Yeah.
anybody says. But you have Bulma, you have Krillin, you have, in a way, you have Vegeta.
Eventually, when he kind of gets more tame.
No, because Vegeta can be just as stupid too.
I know, but he definitely likes to call Kakarot on anything he does wrong. Because I've seen enough by proxy, by way him to know these things.
But no, it's like
too much Dragon Ball Z knowledge is a bad thing.
Harry Potter's a bit of a Gary Stu,
Yeah.
But he's got, let's say, Ron and Hermione is like the devil and angel on his shoulder. Ron saying, let's just have fun. And Hermione saying, no, we all need to do work. So I would say in the books, in the movies, Hermione is a little bit of a Mary Sue. They took away all her flaws. And I feel like it made her less interesting. You know, book Hermione was a little bit more nuanced than movie Hermione was just girl power Hermione.
Well,
you know, it's almost like
the edges of things that books do well.
And then they kind of made Ron stupid. I guess they like book Ron is a little bit like book Ron is way more nuanced. Like, yeah, he's a bit of a he's a bit of a jokester and wants to just have fun and everything. Like, hey, you're the chosen one. Let's party.
Okay, here's the way I described it to I call them my island of misfit toys, my child and all of their friends. Book Ron was Ron Stoppable.
Oh yeah.
They have dumbed him down. They have totally dumbed him down. Book Ron was, and Margaret will understand this reference because I showed her this video. Book Ron was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Bad, Crouching Moron, Hidden Badass.
Yeah. Yes.
That was Ron. Hermione was not all about girl power. She was the, like you said, the angel on the shoulder. She was the voice of reason. She was the, we cannot do this and here is why. That she was the planner. She was the planner of the group.
She would have stopped Harry from taking a lot of risks if it weren't for
right.
Right.
And Harry, he was the chosen one, but it is what it is. In the book, I feel kind of like Madeline Kahn in Clue, flames around my face. Whenever I think about it, because one thing that they never really touched on was Harry was the chosen one, but up until book 7, we did not know if Harry was the chosen one. Because there was this parallel between him and Neville
the entire thing I found the most interesting. Like, is Voldemort's animosity towards Harry a self-fulfilling prophecy because he chose Harry to go after? But if he had gone after Neville, could it have been the same thing? That's the most interesting thing. It's inverting the chosen one trope, and they ignore it in the films, and it drives me nuts.
They totally ignore it, and the only time that you see Neville really being assertive is when he kills Nagini. Sorry for the spoiler for Harry Potter, even though it came out, I don't even want to know how long ago.
But the point is that, like, the chosen one trope to me is because it is kind of like a plot device. It makes the hero a plot device. It's only interesting to me, and as so far as someone subverts it. Like, I think in the books, Harry Potter is interesting because I think that he's a chosen one only so far as Voldemort bought into the prophecy, and it easily could have been Neville if he'd gone after Neville more forcefully.
Well, also in book 5, there's this one point where you see in the hospital that Neville's pain is just as bad, if not worse, than Harry's.
And the same thing,
watching, like, he saves that little bubblegum wrapper that his mother gives him. And I was like, they should have left that in.
It's so nuanced. You lose when you don't get to, because these books are, like, especially 5, which is my favorite book, Order of the Phoenix, and it's like, of course you can't fit that in a 2-hour movie, and that's when I stopped watching the movies as much, because I'm like, oh, you slaughtered Order of the Phoenix, it's this great nuanced 1,000 pages of book,
My
and I
favorite
actually
book
really
is
love
Order of
it.
the Phoenix. My
I love it.
favorite.
I love it. And that's, whatever. But also I was also going to say for the chosen one trope, I enjoy that it is somewhat subverted by the final season and episode of Buffy, where she's like gives the power to all the other
Oh yeah,
potentials, which has
great.
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting that she's like, I don't want to be the chosen one anymore. We're sharing the power, and that's how we're going to win. And then, so like the chosen one trope is so overplayed that unless you find ways to subvert it or like at least lampshade its limitations, and I think it's it's too pat.
Oh,
Yeah.
and can I give a quick shout out for, since we're mentioning Order of the Phoenix, I would like to give a shout out to, I'm sorry, the best fictional villain that I have come across in quite some time, because yes, Voldemort is he who shall not be named. He had everybody living in terror,
Yeah.
but I am sorry, I wanted to bulldoze Umbridge.
Yes.
That
Everybody hates her. There's no one on earth who's like, she's my favorite. Like everybody, like you can maybe like think Voldemort has some cool spots. Everybody hates Umbridge. She's
yes.
because bureaucracy is the fucking worst.
I don't know if anyone out there has seen the Harry Potter musicals.
Parts of them.
Oh, but they're so good. But yeah, their Umbridge is really good too. But
Yeah, I'm just like,
The older you get, the more
This-
relatable she is as a villain. You're like, yeah, this makes sense. This is how my
Yeah.
life goes.
yeah,
You do that, but here's a rule.
totally. But it's like I'll tell anyone, if the doppelganger pisses me off, I'll be like, look, this right here is an example of why alligators eat their young. I'm just saying. She took one of my sweatshirts, and yeah, I went, and they don't want to give it back, and so I'm like, alligators have eaten their young for less. Little pain in my ass. But anyways, I still love her.
So any recs for the week, ladies?
well, obviously, the entire Harry Potter musical trilogy, they're all awesome. The songs are disgustingly catchy, and every character is like turned up to 11. So, and hey, every character is a little sympathetic. Even Voldemort and his love for Quirrell, is very sweet. What's it called? I love those. I'm trying to think of more recs. I'm sorry, you guys go. I'm gonna think.
I have sad news to report. I did try the Too Hot to Handle from Netflix because I said I would. It was not very interesting. I wanted it to be, but I was like, oh God, these people are all like 20 and I can't relate to your hot problems. Like, the only part I did like about it was the narrator was really sarcastic. So her sarcasm was kind of fun, and like her obvious thirst was kind of funny to hear. But I'm like, even for a dating show where like the premise is you can't like actually touch each other because like if you like kiss, you'll lose money off your prize or whatever. I've seen this too many times. It was not nearly the kind of like, this is a terrible idea, stop, abort mission that like
like we were hoping.
Love is Blind. It's no Love is Blind. I'm not gonna lie.
Love
that
is
one
Blind is so horrible, and I love it.
It is horrible. It is horrible. This is not that same kind of horrible at all.
It is so good bad. It is just so good bad to watch.
It's a terrible idea, and these people should not get married to someone they haven't literally seen before. That's not a good idea. But I also actually have an anti-rec, I guess. I think it's worth watching the first episode. There's a show that just came out on Netflix called Outer Banks, and I watched it because I was like, oh, at least I'll get to see the scenery from North Carolina. I haven't been down to like Emerald Island in a while, and I was just nostalgic. And first of all, they shot in South Carolina, and you can tell because there's palmetto trees and like myrtle crepes, as you know, which isn't in North Carolina, Dawn. And but the really annoying part is like it does the things that we were talking about that we don't like with characters, in that it's a lot of info dumping. Like someone was super insecure about their ability to establish characters. So I would say the first 20 minutes of the episode, it's 55 minute episodes, 55 minutes because Netflix, is the main character just giving us narration about his life and his friends. So they don't really bother to establish it. They just go to I'm going to narrate well. And don't get me wrong, I like narration when it's done in a good way. Like I think Veronica Mars always did it with a little funny to it that was enjoyable. But it's like 20 minutes in and like it's almost all narration. So I think it's literally a live example in person by watching as an episode of something why info dumping doesn't work and why it really slows the momentum of like establishing characters. So those are my anti-recs of the week, unfortunately.
Okay.
Actually, I do have another rec, but I'll wait till Dawn goes.
Oh no, I was gonna say on that note, like backpedaling a little bit, don't do that. When you make up whatever mock-up you are of your characters and you're writing it, please do not feel like you have to put every ounce of your research, every ounce of things that you have constructed about every single character in that book. Because especially if you have side characters, I am someone that writes a large cast. Ivy,
That's what I like
Ivy,
about you.
Ivy will attest to that. I ran through Tempered, and I think I had like 42 named characters, and but you don't have backstory for each of them. You have little breadcrumbs from people that will get stories eventually. That's fine. Even the main characters, every ounce of research that I did, everything that I've thought up for their backstory, I didn't put in the book. I did not dump it in the book.
And I feel like that's what Outer Banks did. Is it's like, here's my surfer dude who's doing the narration, and he's like, well, this is my friend Kiara, and her dad owns a diner, and she's pretty rich, but she likes to hang out with us pogues. Pogues means we're poor because it's like junk fish no one wants to eat. I'm like, show me. Like, I don't need your narration for 20 minutes, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm only here because I wanted to see North Carolina scenery, so at least like make my life interesting while I'm watching you. But no.
Okay, but now, so for my recs, I have two recs on. They are animes, and I'll put them up in little quotes like this because one of them is technically not an anime. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Avatar: The Last Airbender has the best characterization. It has almost every trope that you want to find, and it is done so well. You know, Legend of Korra is also pretty good, but
I was gonna say I've heard really good things about that one too.
yeah, Legend of Korra, season 2, it kind of lost its footing a little bit, but it got it back, and then it dove even deeper into things that you wouldn't expect. But Avatar: The Last Airbender, phenomenal when you want to sit back and just look at how different characters play off of each other. And another rec that I have is right behind me, over my shoulder. The anime Full Metal Alchemist.
But only watch it if you want to be emotionally wrecked by utter horror. I think only a few episodes, and you know the episode. My sword sister's like, you've got to watch this, and I watched like 4 episodes, and I'm like, no, it will gut you. The writing is amazing, even for the original series, not even like the rebooted one later, but it will gut you. So just be ready to cry. Is what I'm saying.
Okay,
it's great, but you'll cry. You know.
I know. I totally know.
We all know, because I'm like, this is pretty good. And I get to that one episode, I'm like, what is this? Why am I crying?
Little Big Brother.
Oh, it's so bad. It's a great series.
I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell.
It's a great series, and I completely recommend it. And the writing's amazing, but you have to be ready to cry, because it will definitely make you cry. And you're like, how are you doing this, cartoon anime?
Okay. I will say this. I recommend Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Both series are very long. Full Metal Alchemist, I believe, was like 50 something episodes, and Brotherhood was like 100 and something episodes. So
nice jammies.
I don't know if they can't see me when I'm not talking, right?
They can.
Oh no! You learned my dirty jammy secret.
It's okay. It's Zoom. We all are only wearing like nice tops.
We're all in jammy pants. So, but
the new work pants.
But
I thought you would think I was wearing a pencil skirt or some nice slacks, and I've ruined the illusion.
Full Metal Alchemist was done first. They were about halfway through with the anime series, and the manga was still going on. Well, they went off on a totally different shoot. So the first 26 or so episodes of the original anime is covered in about maybe 15 to 20 episodes in Brotherhood, where a couple of tragic things happen. You will be emotionally wrecked, but vindication does happen later for one of the characters. Unfortunately, not the one in episode 4. If you cannot take a lot of trauma, do not watch Full Metal Alchemist. When they get to this is as spoiler free as I can make it. When they get to Central, skip ahead a couple of episodes.
I watched Attack on Titan. Can I handle this?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. If you want, I can warn you about it a little bit later when we're not on.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
Oh
and
no,
it's worth watching, but
Yeah.
you're gonna need a lot of tissues. Is all I'm saying. You need to be in a headspace where you're ready for it.
I'm good with that. I like a cry and I love a scare. You
Yeah.
know,
Both.
so
You will get both.
oh great.
Yeah, so
I
they
haven't
have.
read. Oh, go sorry.
Yeah, so Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Those are
Mine.
3 series.
The Lock and Key. There's a graphic. It started as a graphic novel by Joe Hill. A little story about that too. If people read the graphic novel and were put off by the level of violence and things like that in it, I will say the show has toned down those elements significantly and actually made some really good changes. Joe Hill was EP on everything, and he was okay with them making it a little bit more family friendly.
Yeah.
My only problem is they toned down the violence and the gore, but they also toned down the scares to where it's like Goosebumps level scary. And
it feels like they're aiming more for like a teen tween market.
I think they were going for.
I think that's what they were
have a
supposed to
wider
be going
audience.
for.
Like Netflix was marketing as almost like the tween version of Hill House or something.
Yeah, a little bit, and but it is good. And there's some things they changed from the graphic novels that I was like, oh, that's interesting.
The mythos is really compelling.
The
It's very
cast is
interesting.
good. Some of the things that happen are interesting. I would say that it's like a mix of Goosebumps and Buffy in tone, right? And
yeah, it feels more goosebumpy than Buffy, to be fair.
It's worth. Well, there's teen stuff, so that
yeah,
gets
there is
a
some
little
teen
bit
side
bumpy
drama,
edge.
whatever.
But I think it's worth a watch.
It has a second season, so you don't have to feel like you're going to be left on a cliffhanger too.
Yeah,
they've ordered one. I mean, eventually it'll show up when.
Yeah, but the funny thing was, at one point I'm watching in the later episode, and I see this paramedic. I'm like, God, that guy looks like Stephen King, and
of course.
So I go and I look up Joe Hill, and I find out that that's the writer. He's making a cameo, and it's Stephen King's son. So that was funny to me. I did not know that Joe Hill was Stephen King's son.
Yeah.
You know.
I think since he submitted his manuscripts initially under the name Joe Hill, that his agent, I think they knew after they signed him, but they didn't know before. Like they didn't know like what the deal was. So
my friend Melissa said it was a missed opportunity that he didn't pick Joe Prince as his screen name, you know. But you know, King Prince.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Party hard. Yeah. And then the other series I recommend on a character front is the Bridgerton series, which is coming to Netflix someday.
Yeah, everything we're saying is like when it's planned, it'll come sometime, but
yeah,
I guess it's as good as everybody else's.
As far as romance, because I'm just the romance gal. I really recommend.
We need one to counteract our like here's anime and things that die recommendations.
Well,
yeah,
they're just like fluffy romance. Julia Quinn is really good with dialogue and characters. She's really good at making characters and their interactions be fun and funny and making you invested. So a lot of them really just leap off the page. And I just love that. But I will say that I've read all of the Bridgerton books. Some I like more than others. I would say that you're going to have to read them in order to enjoy up to book 4. And honestly, after book 4, you can probably stop reading. But I'm horrible. I know.
Damn, with faint praise there.
They drop. It's just that they're not as compelling. I honestly think it was a mistake not to make book 4 book 8, because I think that there's a certain thing that happens in book 4 that after the tension of the series long tension over, and then in the rest of the books, because she doesn't want to spoil it if you're reading out of order, they barely mention that thing. And I'm like, I wanted to see the fallout of that thing in the rest of the books, and she didn't do that. I hope the TV series is able to save that a little bit. but there is a bit of a limitation in each book being part of a series and also a standalone in how much she can mention things. I really think it would have been better if she treated it as a true serial and said, you need to read all of them in order, and then made book 4, book 8. And I love Julia Quinn. All the other books are still good. They're just not as good as books 1, 2, and 4. 3 is okay. No, 3 is okay too. No, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are good. They're solid. Yeah. It's just the rest. The thing that happens in book 4 is such a big deal that I felt cheated by not having the fallout, because she was trying to keep the other book spoiler free for the previous, and I'm just I wanted more, you know. So yeah, and I feel like a lot of Bridgerton readers feel about the way. My opinion is not revolutionary and only mine. I think that this is a pretty popular opinion. So yeah, that's where I am.
That'll be
Bridgerton
another
series, Lock and Key, and the Harry Potter musicals. Beautiful stuff.
that'll probably be another episode. You know, what to do and what not to do in a series.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Now, keep in mind, Julia Quinn is freaking famous and awesome, and I shouldn't be criticizing her at all. I'm a very picky reader. I don't think that I can do better. I'm just saying that as a reader, I want to reach in.
You're allowed to like criticize writers. I mean, I think was I talking about
it's
this
not a thing about
week? I think I did, and I mentioned like Stephen King sucks at endings. Like,
yeah,
they're in such a different echelon. If you talk about like, oh, J.K. Rowling should have done this, or Julia Quinn should have done that, it's not like we're competing with people who are basically brand new.
Yeah.
The grocery
Yeah,
store. Like,
I love
it's not a
Julia
jealousy
Quinn.
thing.
I read her every time she comes out with a book because her dialogue's wonderful and her characters are very fun. You know, her energy is like, it's like a little Jane Austen-y, and I love it. It's very comedy of manners and character driven, and that's great. For me, I just really enjoy her dialogue. Very witty.
Okay, so alrighty, so that's going to be a wrap for us. Before you guys sign off, we'll go on with the normal like log out of leave a comment if you have any opinions on things that we've recommended, things that you want to add on, something that we may have missed. Feel free to comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Like and subscribe to the channel so this way you can know when we come up. The videos will be posting pretty much for right now, pretty much on Wednesdays. So this way, you know, you'll get used to seeing us a little bit more. So for Writers in Rec, this is Dawn.
Maybe.
April. Abby. Abby. It's both. I don't care.
Alrighty, and we will see you guys next time. Bye, YouTube.